So you watched Fischl's basics guide, and now you're wondering a couple of different teams for her. So that's what we're going to do in this video, is that we're going to look at some different teams, some niche teams, some normal teams, and talk about why they kind of synergize together. And first, we're going to start off with the Sethos, Nahida, Sheila, and Fischl team that we used in the last video. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this team before we talk about some others. So the role that Fischl plays in this particular team is going to be an off-field damage dealer. I don't like sub-DPS. Off-field damage dealer, and a battery, somebody that is giving energy to another character. In this case, it is Sethos. Sethos' entire kit revolves around using the energy for his burst to increase his charge attack damage through shadow-piercing shots. Shadow-piercing shots. So Fischl is doing damage. She is getting some aggravated reactions. She's allowing Nahida to get spread reactions, but she is also going to be feeding energy to Sethos so that way we can get his 4 shadow piercing shots and maximize his damage output. Yes, we could use somebody else in here like Sucrose or Kazuha or somebody like that, but then we wouldn't necessarily be guaranteed to get off 4 of the shadow piercing shots. We would only really be able to get off 2 or 3 because my Sethos particularly has 0 additional energy recharge. So this allows for me to get that needed energy to Sethos to allow him to get these shadow piercing shots. And Fischl is just doing a lot of damage in her own right off field. I guess Oz is doing the damage for her, but it works really, really well. And because Fischl is C6, we're still getting some coordinated attacks with Sethos as well. Nahida is re-triggering her skill, getting spread reactions, and then Sheila is in there to shred enemies, make our character stronger, and then of course use her burst for healing. So this team is a great example of the 2 roles that Fischl can do, being that off-field damage dealer and that battery, working phenomenally together. Once I started building Sethos and I'm wanting to get him to do a ton of damage and get his 4 shadow piercing shots, I quickly realized that I kind of need to run him with Fischl. Because of that energy that Oz gives us, it's almost necessarily needed to run Sethos with Fischl, especially Sethos with lower cons. Maybe with higher cons on Sethos, you can not use Fischl and use somebody else in here to get his own personal damage up. But because I don't have those cons, I am very reliant on having Fischl provide energy over to Sethos to allow for him to get the full use of his shadow piercing shots on the kit. So this team works together very, very synergistically to allow for consistent maximum damage from our 2 damage dealers, being Sethos and Fischl, and then of course Nahida's Nahida. She's going to get a ton of damage anyway. Now obviously, if I did have 4-piece Golden Troop on Fischl, she would be doing more damage than she currently is. I did put Skyward Heart back on her as well for this, so that way she's got a really good crit split. And then, of course, we do have an EM Sands on her because we are causing aggravated reactions. We are going to change her build slightly whenever we talk about another team, because we're not going to be caring about her EM. We're going to want her to actually have more attack than EM in that team. Now we're going to get to a slightly different team, and then it's going to still be an aggravate team, but it's going to be a little bit different. That is going to be Sheila, Alhaitham, Kuki, and Fischl. This is going to be another straight up aggravated team, but instead of a main on-field damage dealer being Electro, it is going to be Alhaitham being Dendro. Now this team is much harder to kind of do because we don't have as much Dendro going around, right? Alhaitham, Oz needs to be attacking the enemy that Alhaitham is attacking in order for the aggravated reactions to happen. Yes, Kuki can go to somebody else, right? So that we can get some grouping in here with Sheila healing the team. Maybe we could use like Sucrose or Kazuha. I think I actually swapped out Sheila for Sucrose at some point in here just to spread around EM. But my Kuki does have Deep Woods on her, so that's why she's in there. She's our Deep Wood Shredder for Alhaitham to get more damage. Now, this is actually going to kind of take the battery out of Fischl. We don't need her to battery. We mainly just need her to do damage. Yes, the extra energy is not going to hurt anybody, but we don't need that. We just have her on there for the damage. Now, this team is, in my opinion, less viable without C6 because Fischl C6 has that Oz's coordinated attack if Oz is on the field, but maybe not necessarily within the enemy's range, or the enemy's not within his range. Then we still get that electro coordinated attack to keep aggravate on the enemy. This is where kind of having that grouper of Kazuha would come in, because it would pull all the enemies together, so that way Oz is definitely attacking the correct enemy and doing a fair good amount of damage while Alhaitham is focusing on it with Dendro. But all in all, still a good team, another aggravate team. If you don't have Nahida, but you still want to be using Fischl in an aggravate team, you can still be using a main danger damage dealer like Alhaitham. So next we're going to talk about a team that is going to be niche, and this is going to be Arlecchino, Beto, Fischl, and Chevy. And by niche, it's going to be because it requires a particular thing, right? That's what my definition of niche has kind of gone towards, is that it requires a particular aspect of the team to work. That being Chevy. We need Chevy to make this overloaded team work. Without Chevy, the enemy's resistance to both Electro and Pyro is going to be much harder to get. Chevy also gives an attack buff and is a healer for this team, so it works out really, really well. Now we are going to change Fischl's build over. We don't care about her EM. We want attack on her. So I am going to change to like 2-piece attack for this and take her EM sands off of her and give an attack sands to her. Now this team works synergistically because Arlecchino is going to be Arlecchino is going to be our main on-field damage dealer doing pyro damage. We need to cause an overloader reaction before we bring Chevy out so that way we can get the enemy weaker to Electro and Pyro. But because of how Beto's burst works with Arlecchino's normal attacks, every enemy that we essentially hit at any point is going to have their resistances shredded instantly, making them take more damage from all the elements in our party. Fischl is there for damage, off-field damage, as well as batterying Beto. Beto is energy hungry. You need to kind of put Beto and Fischl together if you plan on running Beto in a team. You need that battery, unless you have like 260% ER on Beto. So again, this team works out very, very well because Arlecchino and Chevy apply the Pyro, and then Beto and Fischl apply the Electro, causing overloaded. And with how Chevy's kit works, that is exactly what we want. Also, Beto's burst can keep up with Arlecchino's very, very fast normal attacks. So Fischl putting Oz on the field is going to contribute some damage, but it's also mainly just going to be for energy for Beto and to cause some overload reactions, so that way we can get Chevy to use her hold skill and give the attack buff to the team, right? It kind of all works together in a way that Chevy is buffing the entire team, allowing for Arlecchino, Beto, and Fischl to all do respectable damage. Is Arlecchino going to be doing those really high numbers that she does in vape teams? No. But is Beto and Fischl going to make up for that? They very much can make up for that. So instead of it running a hyper carry team, like a hyper carry Arlecchino, this is going to be a much more spread out Arlecchino. This might also be if you don't like running vape, or maybe you don't have Yelan or Xingqiu or C6 Candace, which are the ones that you kind of need to run Arlecchino with to get vapes. If you don't have them, but you have Beto, Fischl, and Chevy, then this team can work very, very well. Now, I do think it works better with having cons on Beto and Fischl specifically because of that off-field coordinated electro attack and because of the shield that we get from Beto, just to kind of help. Also, it makes Beto's cons make enemies weaker to electro even further. So then her and Fischl are just doing more damage. So you can do a lot with this to kind of make the enemies weaker, so that way the entire team is doing more damage. And this works really, really well on enemies that have Geoshields because Overloaded can break Geoshields as well. Now, the next team is going to be another Overloaded team. However, this is going to be a slightly different team, right? This is going to be a double DPS, double damage dealer, double support. One of my most consistent teams in the Abyss is actually Raiden, Dia, Chevy, and Bennett. This is a phenomenal team, especially if they have Geoshields, because this team breaks them so easily. Raiden kind of batteries Dia. Dia's burst works with Raiden, and Chevy's kit allows for the enemies to be weakened. Now, this specifically works really well if you don't have C6 Sara. There are a couple characters in the game where if you don't have C6, their ability to support goes way down, being Sara, Goru, and Farzan. We were actually talking about this on stream last night. C6, taking Sara out if you don't have C6 and putting somebody like Dia, or in this case, Fischl, in this team can be very, very good because we're shifting from a hypercarry Raiden team over to a double damage dealer, double support in this case. So if you want to run like a Raiden hypercarry team, but you don't have C6 Sara, then scrap the Raiden hypercarry and run a Raiden double damage dealer, being like Raiden Dia, Raiden Fischl, Chevy, Bennett. And again, this kind of works the same way as the other team, where we just have double damage dealers that are going to be able to use the buffs provided by Chevy and Bennett, dropping Bennett's burst, going to Raiden, proccing her burst. Not hitting super high numbers with Raiden. Obviously, C6R would allow Raiden to hit higher, but The enemy is still going to be taking a ton of damage from Raiden and her burst, from Fischl and Oz, and then we still have double healing, double buffing from our other two. And it's very, very easy to cause all of these overloader reactions to keep the enemy weak to these elements. Now, finally, we're going to talk about taser teams. Now, I am going to be using Tartaglia. A Yato would be much better. I do plan on making a Yato taser team whenever I get a Yato. I haven't used my Tartaglia in 6 months, so I just threw some artifacts on him. Now, this taser team is essentially because Tartaglia's normal attacks are so fast, Beto's burst can keep up with it. And like we said earlier, if you're going to use Beto, you need to have Fischl with Beto to battery Beto. So this is going to be Tartaglia, Beto, Fischl, and Sheilinen for the healing, as well as to shred the enemy resistance and buff us with her weapon and artifact set. So this is really, really good. Mainly the main synergy between this team is going to be Tartaglia and Beto. Fischl is there to provide extra damage and particles and energy particles to Beto. We do like that she gives a little bit extra damage, but she's more so there to keep up with Beto's energy requirements, Sheilinen being our support character for this. This is a team where we're going to have one main on-field damage dealer, and then everybody else is off-field. Like I said, I do plan on running this team whenever I get a Yato. I think that'd be fun. I don't have a Yato. I want a Yato so bad. And in this particular team, again, like the overloaded team, we don't care about elemental mastery. We would want to build Fischl pure attack. So that is going to be it for this video. Kuki has green hair. I have green hair, and I'll see you in the next one.